How's it going, everybody? This is Asking Me Anything About Politics. So, if you've got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know that it can be like trying to learn a new language. So, that is what we're doing here. We are trying to create a space where people can ask questions about politics without any fear of ridicule or judgment. There's no roasting here, there's no debating, there's no making fun of people for not knowing things, there's no calling people stupid for having different political beliefs than other people. We practice a kind of radical empathy here where you can ask anything that you like. This is a judgment free zone. And so long as you are asking in good faith, you will receive a good faith and objective answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. It can be like trying to learn a new language. Jose Arujo says, Lauer? Am I too loud or something? Louder? Do you need me to be louder? What the hell does that mean, Lauer? So, yeah, good to see you again, Jose Arujo. Any questions about politics, everybody? Just let me. Oh, volume up. Gotcha. All right, how's that? Is that better? Yeah. Thank you for being my tech here. Appreciate it. It's the Rocketeer. Yeah, there's a different microphone for TikTok than Twitch and YouTube, so it's a different setup. It's a different setup. So yeah, if anybody's got any questions about politics, just let me know. Jose, let me know if I am loud enough for you now. But yeah, I am here to answer all of your questions about politics, everybody. So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. Still not loud enough for you, Jose? For real? Or a. All right, let me see what I can do here. Boop, boop, boop. Do. All right, how's that, Jose? Chi Town Kick says, have you seen Fast and Furious? I've seen all the Fast and Furious movies. Gargoyam says, is Israel too influential in American politics? They are, Gargoyam. Didn't you ask me this yesterday? Welcome, everybody, to the live stream. My name is Jared Berenstein, and I am here to answer all of your questions about politics. So if you got any questions about politics, just let me know in the chat. Gargoyam says, nah, yes, about Elmo yesterday. Ah, okay, cool. The Rat Man says, should I care about politics? Absolutely. Politics is the business of what our government is doing. It is creating laws and institutions and mechanisms that affect you and everybody that you care about. So 100% you should pay attention to politics. It is very important. Ivan says, did Epstein kill himself? I don't know, but the Trump administration is acting sus as hell around it. Jason says, what's going on with Syria now? I just saw some military building get blown up. I saw that on Reddit also. I'm not sure if that was today or not, but yeah, there was a coup. The authoritarian that was in charge of Syria got ousted. I believe his name was Bashar al-Assad. He was aligned with Russia, and instead, an insurgent group that is led by a fellow whose name I can't remember, who I think used to be in the Taliban or something. They took over and they promised everybody that they were going to be a better government for the people of Syria, and that to please asked everybody to please remove their sanctions because they were going to be a better al-Shara. That's probably what his name is. Yeah. All right. Medic Court says, do you think the Dems will start winning if they embrace the Bernie policy agenda? So I'm a progressive. I am much more on the Bernie side of the Democratic Party than I am the Pelosi Schumer side of the Democratic Party. That being said, I don't know how much adopting the policy agenda of the progressives will actually increase their voter share. I believe that it will. Like that's, to me that platform has a lot more appeal to it than the kind of like milquetoast centrist platform. But part of my thesis here on this live stream is in communicating to people like just how weaponized the information environments have become against the Democratic Party, so that no matter what they say or do, we are flooded with all of these narratives about how they're doing the wrong thing no matter what they're doing. They are always too far to the left or too far to the right, or doing too much or doing too little. So I don't like to think about this as a what do the Democrats need to do to win. I like to think of this as what are you and I going to do to unelect Republicans, because the Republican Party has abandoned the American people. They have abandoned the project of a multilingual, multiracial, multi-religious democracy. And the things that they have done are needlessly cruel and damaging to people, and they are allowing unprecedented amount of corruption to happen. Z says, "Are you familiar with MMT? What's MMT?" Keith Rosensteel says, "When did it change? When did what change?" Mason Neal 43 says, "I believe in a woman's right to choose and lower costs and lower taxes." Interesting. That is an interesting collection of beliefs, Mason. I hope that you will join me in unelecting every Republican. Mandy Kidwell Parkins says, "Do you know if it's true if Iran put out a bounty on him?" I think it's true that they've done that before. Like when he assassinated Qasem Soleimani, I think they did a similar thing. Modern monetary theory. I'm unfamiliar with modern monetary theory. Z Bunch. It's possible that I know what that is, but by a different name. All right, the Rat Man. Am I right to believe that politics have slowly started dividing the country? So the Rat Man, you're not 100% wrong, but it's much more specific than that. It's not politics that have divided the country. It is a bunch of people who have figured out that getting the populace, the 99%, to fight amongst themselves is the perfect cover for doing all of the malicious and greedy and barbaric things that they want to do, like paying people slave wages and poisoning our air and our water and our food and dismantling our government and shit like that. So yeah, there's nothing inherent about politics that did that. This is not the Republican Party and the Democratic Party that did this. This is the billionaire class that did this, and they're working with the Republican Party to do this as well. All right, JJ says, "Don't you hate it when you're caught stalking and you got to erase your victim and find another?" What a terrible thing to say. Heisenberg is back unofficial, says, "If you believe in trans rights, you don't believe in women's rights." That's not true, Heisenberg. Homo Sasadon says, "Dude, read a book, please. We're not about democracy or republic. We're actually a democratic republic." Homo Sasadon. Let's see here. Mason Neal 43 says, "I like Kamala. I like Kamala too." All right, excellent questions, everybody, so far. Thank you for being here. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics. It's the Rocketeer over on Twitch says, "It's been a while since anyone's articulated clearly, but could you explain to the class the difference between leftists, progressives, and liberals?" Thank you for your question. It's the Rocketeer. You know you're one of my favorites, but those are not semantics that I really truck with all that much. I know that there are some people who believe that the leftists are the ones who are the Democrat apologists, and the liberals are the Democrat apologists. The leftists are the tankies, but I don't really know what the differentiation is between them. And honestly, I don't even know if it's productive to have all those different breakdowns. It's just ways for bots to fight amongst themselves on the internet. Cat7301 says, "How do we get Trump out?" We do the work, Cat, and we have to elect Democrats. We have to inform people. We have to recruit people and convince them to vote for Democrats. Or just voting against Republicans is enough. We have to put political pressure on our elected representatives. We have to join work. We have to join groups that are already doing this work, like Indivisible, and Run for Something and Vote Save America. We need to run for office. We need to support better politicians. We need to protest and boycott and strike and do all the things, you know. Randomness is, "What is your opinion on Trump's policies on the natural world?" It's terrible. You know, the Republican Party is talking about selling our national parks so that Nestle and fucking Clorox can make more billions of dollars. You know, Mercy 870 says, "Listen, I was on New York financier Jeff Island's list, but I swear I was only there for the snorkeling show thing." Heisenberg is back of an official says, "Like Democrats, yeah, they have done so well. They literally have done so well. I don't really know what you're referring to." Rosalind 1954, good to see you as well. Let's see here. Z Bunch says, "Unfortunately, both parties are beholden to Wall Street financiers and Silicon Valley technocrats." Z Bunch, that is inaccurate. The Republican Party is way more beholden to Wall Street financiers and Silicon Valley technocrats. The Democratic Party is much less so. There are politicians in the Democratic Party who are, as you describe, but the platform of the Democratic Party is standing up to oligarchs, both in the finance and tech world, and fossil fuel companies, the billionaire class supporting workers. And there are the majority, I would say, of the politicians, the elected politicians in the Democratic Party are for supporting the workers, standing up to billionaires and oligarchs, et cetera, et cetera. Jessica says, "Thoughts on what it would take to shut down Fox and other propaganda news?" That is an excellent question. I have no idea. You know, often struggled with this. I think the main issue is that they don't really have a model that needs eyeballs. You know, like they're kind of astroturfed by the billionaire class. The Murdochs love making money off of Fox News, but they don't really. That's not really their goal. Their goal is propaganda, and so they're always going to be getting funding for their stupid ass, late night infomercial commercials by people like the My Pillow guy and shit like that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's a really tough question. I think honestly, just the best thing we can do is divert eyeballs away as best we can, convince everybody how toxic and inaccurate it is. Cody says, "You agree that we should free Palestine?" I do. All right, Heisenberg, congratulations. You're out of here. Okay, scrolling down to the bottom. Denise F. Massey says, "You have to remember freedom of the press. There's no way you can shut them down." Yeah, I don't believe in the government mandating that Fox News needs to go away, but maybe they can mandate that they're not allowed to call themselves news anymore. That seems right. Fog War Production says, "Bro, Jarrett just kicked Walter White." Yeah, you think I'm fucking scared? I am the one who blocks. Anybody? Anybody here? Let's see here. Stoner Punk says, "How come they can't ask Epstein victims who hurt them?" That's a really good question. I don't know how much of that information is available to the FBI. I don't know how much the victims have had their identities protected. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Potentially, they are bound by some legal order that says that they are not allowed to reveal the things that they have testified. Like I don't know. Ezra Arze says, "I wouldn't consider phone news as a press." I mean, I guess they technically are, but we're talking about semantics here. Like, are they allowed to call themselves news? Are they freedom of the press because they're a bunch of propagandists who lie all the fucking time? Michael says, "Who do you think is better, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris?" Kamala Harris by a mile. Almost everybody is better than Donald Trump. Mason Neal 43 says, "I can't vote yet, but I can in 2028. Excellent. Well, I hope that you're staying informed until then, my guy. Fog War Production says, "Bro, I was eating lunch. You can't make me laugh like that right now." Jack Kendron says, "I think bombing Iran was bad, but I think the way we did it was the cleanest and most efficient way." I mean, I suppose it's like that's what the military does. Like they're very good at what they do. Did they fuck it up? No. I mean, but I don't really think that Trump deserves any flowers for just the military not fucking up a kind of like, the most sort of like cut and dry, we are way more powerful than they are. There's no way they can stop us kind of a bombing raid, Susie says they were told they have to call themselves Fox Entertainment. I'm not really sure what the name of that. I'm the one who blocks. That's funny. It's the Rocketeer. Let's see here. Dan Blackwood says, "Who do you think is better, Donald Trump or Gargamel, the evil wizard from the Smurfs?" I guess Gargamel, he's hurt a lot fewer people, I think. Let's see here. But excellent question so far, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Jarrett Berenstein. I'm here to answer all of your questions about politics. I know that politics can be really intimidating, and I know that depending on where you live and who your friends are, it can be really difficult to ask certain questions because people might think that you're some sort of a cuck libtard, or people might think that you're some sort of a MAGA fascist, and you don't have to worry about those kinds of judgments here. You can ask any question that you like, and so long as you're asking in good faith, I will respond in kind. Gumby0524 says, "Why people think Trump is alone? I bet there are more people around helping him." Oh yeah, there are a ton of people helping him. He's got a real evil fucking cabinet with Stephen Miller and Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and Kristi Noem and Pam Bondi. Like, they all fucking suck. They're all terrible. Steve Bannon's terrible. Peter Thiel is terrible. Elon Musk is terrible. Vladimir Putin is terrible. Yeah, he's got a whole fucking rogue gallery of pieces of shit, Mason Neal says, "From Richmond County, North Carolina." Let's see here. Madam Hamlet. Sweet. Yeah, fucking do the work in North Carolina, man. We need you there. Rail says, "Gavin Newsom is suing Fox News for defamation." All right, sweet. Yeah, good for him. Dan Blackwood says, "The Smurfs also go out of their way to antagonize him sometimes. It's a nuanced dynamic." Yeah, we got a real Israel-Palestine situation happening between Gargamel and the Smurfs. Thank you for being here, everybody. My name is Jarrett Berenstein. I am here to answer all of your questions about politics. You can ask me anything that you like. It can be as simple or as complicated that you like, and you don't have to worry about getting roasted or ridiculed or debated. This is not one of those shows where I call people up and I yell at them for having different political beliefs than me. This is not one of those shows where I try to own anybody. And, you can be a Republican or a liberal or a Democrat or a MAGA or a not MAGA. I will answer in good faith, regardless. But I appreciate you being here. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language because there's all these weird abbreviations and words that we just kind of like throw around everywhere, and we just kind of assume that people know it. And if you don't, and sometimes we just refer to politicians by their last names. And if you don't know who those people are, it can be really difficult to figure out what's going on in our government, And so this is the place where you can ask all of those questions. I appreciate everybody being here, but it looks like we were just regulars. Looks like we were just, John D says, can Trump actually fire Jerome Powell? I'm going to quote Jerome Powell here and say not permissible under the law. But that is, we are existing in a weird time in American government where we are living through a constitutional crisis, basically, where the people who are in charge of enforcing the rules don't actually care about enforcing the rules. So if Trump tries to fire Jerome Powell, who is going to enforce that? Who is going to stop that? If Jerome Powell sues, will it get all the way up to the Supreme Court? Then the Supreme Court just decides to side with Trump because they always fucking do. It's like, it's scary to think that the law isn't going to protect us from this administration the way that it should, that the Constitution isn't going to. Technically he can't, but he also technically can't end birthright citizenship, and he's still trying to do that. And he technically can't, suspend habeas corpus and just imprison people and deport them without any kind of proof that they've done anything wrong or that they're even here illegally. He's not allowed to build concentration camps or, triple the budget of his own private Gestapo, but he fucking did all those things, Let's see here. Johnny88 says, LOL, a bunch of Harris voters in here. I sure hope so. They're good people, Harris voters. Alex Sassone, good to see you again. Let's see here. Ezra Arze says, who's worse, Emperor Palpatine or King Trump? I'm going to say Palpatine. At least Palpatine was part of bringing balance to the Force, Gumby0524 says, someone who says I'm not political, actually, that is a political position. Yeah, I basically agree with that. You're saying that I have the privilege of not having to pay attention to politics. All right. Rep8319 says, dude, I'm laughing at you. Well, maybe you should be laughing with me instead. Dan Blackwood says, or deport legal residents to nations not their own origin. Yeah, exactly, man. Rome Sun 1 says, coming in, changing names of things like the Gulf that people died for does not matter to him. You mean the Gulf, probably. But he's a real piece of shit, Donald Trump. Fog War Productions says, not to mention Palpatine was masterfully pragmatic and competent in a way that Trump isn't. Yeah, respect to the player for being conniving and smart as opposed to just fucking an idiot who lied his way into power. Johnny88 says, Trump best friend Israel ever had as president. I don't agree with that. Maybe he is the best friend that Netanyahu and a bunch of really shitty people have, but definitely not to the greater population of Israel. Rocco Lazara says, favorite governor and least favorite. I don't really have a favorite or least favorite governor. I got ones that I like and ones that I don't like. I can't even remember if like Ron DeSantis sucks. Is Sarah Huckabee Sanders still the governor of Arkansas? She fucking sucks. But yeah, I like all them Democratic governors. They're all doing the right thing. Manuel Mendoza says the empire is falling. We can stop it from falling if people like me and you do the work, Manuel. Johnny88 says, who is better? Literally everybody. Rick Brunetti, 1959, says, do you have any plans to do a show in Denver anytime soon? So I'm technically on hiatus for the rest of the year. I did all of my tours in the first 4 or 5 months of the year, and so now I'm at home for the rest of the year. So the next time I'm doing any road shows will be in 2026. Dan Blackwood says, I really like Tim Walz the more I read about what he's doing in Minnesota. Yeah, I like Tim Walz also. Mason Neal says, you should buy Kamala Harris hat that says Make America Great Again. No, I don't think that's a great idea. Vincent says, what do you think about the state of the U.S. and where we'll be in 50 years economically and socially? So the state of the U.S. is bad. Like, we're in a very, very bad place. The judiciary has been taken over by an extremist right-wing faction that believes in, authoritarian power over democracy. They believe in dismantling the regulatory states and so that billionaires can poison us all with the chemical runoffs from their factories and shit like that. This is in the Supreme Court, but also they're peppered throughout all the various different, districts and appeals courts and shit like that. The Republican Party is currently in full control of the White House and Congress, and they are using that power to dismantle the government, to hurt marginalized people, to make it harder to vote them out of power, to incite their violence to base, incite their base to violence, and it's bad. We're in the bad place, guys. We are literally in the bad place. But where we're going to be in 50 years, that is entirely up to the citizens of this country, whether or not they decide to do the work to stop people like Donald Trump, to stop people like Ted Cruz and Sam Alito and Amy Coney Barrett, And when I say stop, what I mean is getting them out of power, not through physical violence, but through the electoral process, through the regular means of transition, where we elect better politicians. We do the work of ripping people out of their propaganda rabbit holes. We flood the zone with Democrats. We unelect every Republican, and we primary any Democrat that is not willing to do, the kind of radical changes that we need to make sure that shit like this doesn't happen again. We need to add seats to the Supreme Court. We need to add term limits to the judiciary, potentially term limits to people in Congress. We need to get rid of the Electoral College. We need to tax the billionaires. We need to overturn Citizens United, etc. Alrighty, Doug says, why can't we get term limits? Because people haven't been voting for the politicians who are going to vote for term limits. T Wizard says, voted for Trump, I don't regret it, but this Epstein stuff is frustrating. Let the chips fall. T Wizard, what do you like about what Trump has done, except for this Epstein stuff? Mason Neal says, who'd you vote for? Democrats up and down the ballot. K2 says, why is populism bad? I thought we wanted democracy. So populism is kind of like a wide term that can mean a lot of different things. Some people define it as just, ruling for the popular will of the people. If a policy is popular, then they'll do it. Some people interpret it as, standing up for the majority of the population, protecting them from the powerful 0.1%. The problem with populism is that it can be, and often is, just rhetoric. Trump campaigned as a populist in both 2016 and 2024. And in both cases, we have seen that he was fucking lying, that he did not give a shit about the will of the people, what would be better for the people. It is an easy mantle to adorn and then just not govern that way, Alrighty. Atomic Stoner says, stop voting for politicians. Politicians don't care about people who don't feed their pockets. That's wrong, Atomic Stoner. You don't want to say that all politicians are the same, because then you're giving cover for the worst ones. And if you look at outcomes, if you look at platform, if you look at policy, the Democratic Party and Democratic politicians are way better than Republican Party politicians and their platform. Samantha Elizabeth Locklear says, how can we support our immigrants? I feel helpless, hopeless in these unprecedented times. I would direct you to mutual aid funds, Samantha. I would also say do the work, because there's the immediate problem of how do we help these people right now? And also, how do we stop the sort of the spreading cancer of what the Republican Party is currently doing? And that's what I call the work. And if you want to know more about that, I would say check out my Discord. I've got a whole thread posted about what the work is. T Wizard says, I like his fair trade views. I like his goal and work for peace overseas. T Wizard, so how do you feel about the tariffs? That's not really fair trade. It's more like, government control over what goods are allowed to come in and out of the country. And also, how do you feel about all of the global turmoil that is escalating under the Trump administration as opposed to becoming more peaceful? Let's see here. K2 says, I can't think of any politician that doesn't fold when the lobbies come with their bags of cash. I can think of lots. We got Bernie Sanders and AOC and Jasmine Crockett and Maxwell Frost and Tim Walz and J.B. Pritzker and there's lots of them. Let's see here. T Wizard said, I'm for equal tariffs or no tariffs, fair for everyone. T Wizard, then why are you okay with the fact that we have massive tariffs on countries that have no tariffs on us. Let's see here. Bane says there are heroes on both sides. Evil is everywhere. I don't know if I would say that there are heroes in the Republican Party. Like, they all just uniformly voted to cut taxes for billionaires and take away health care from everybody else. And they have voted to put us at an energy deficit compared to the rest of the world. There's going to be brownouts. Electricity is going to be more expensive for everybody. Inflation is going up. Like, yeah, I don't see any heroes on that side. Bane says that's a quote from Star Wars 3. Oh, from Revenge of the Sith? Damon Porter says, should California get rid of its independent districting commission? I don't know. I mean, I like Gavin Newsom saying that he's going to do that in retaliation for the governor of Texas, Governor Paxton, trying to redistrict in not a year when we were doing the census, which is, I think, illegal. So yeah, I don't mind it. I don't mind Newsom going hard against these policies where Republicans are trying to lie and cheat their way into political power. Ethan says, is LeBron James the next president? Probably not. Beat says, what's your opinion on your grandma being a lampshade? What's your opinion on no longer being in this live anymore, my guy? That's anti-Semitic. I don't know if anybody else caught that. Let's see here. Where's my guy who I was talking to? T-Wizard. Yeah, I'm still waiting for your response, T-Wizard. Andy says, we need more people like Paul Wellstone. Yeah, he was great. Sorry for Tomorrow says, I don't feel like there's any going back from where we are. There 100% is Sorry for Tomorrow. It just takes people like me and you doing the work. And here's the thing. The rich and the powerful, the billionaire class, the Republican Party, Donald Trump, they want you to give up. They want you to feel hopeless. So don't give them that gift. When they say resistance is futile, I want you to tell them, fuck you. Ezra Arze says, is there another nation's political system that you admire? I mean, not specifically, but I am for all the other nations that are more progressive than we are, that have a more, robust social safety nets, public health care, shit like that. Let's see here. Mr. Nice Guy says, my favorite unemployed host. I'm not unemployed. I have a job fucking your mom. K2 says, I don't think you can avoid populism in democratic system. That's how it is designed. Yeah, but I mean, populism can be good or bad. It just has to be, the people that are implementing it, Flamingo Mo says, the rich want you to lose hope and feel demoralized. That is accurate. Atomic Stoner says, what are your thoughts on the two-party system? I agree with certain points on both sides. I think that there is an argument to be made for expanding the electorate to other parties. That being said, I feel like the two-party system gets blamed for a lot of things that aren't its fault. We can't have other parties in the system, though, until we have ranked choice voting, and the Republican Party is trying to make ranked choice voting illegal. So if you want ranked choice voting, if you want to expand, if you want to open up our political system to more various different parties and shit like that, then you got to vote for Democrats. All right, scrolling down to the bottom, Carmine, this live brought to you by Planned Parenthood. Mr. Nice Guy says, but you are gay. I showed your mom that I was not last night. All right. See you later, buddy. I'm tired of roasting you. Let's see here. Sorry for Tomorrow says, I'm going to leave the country, but I feel like it's abandoning the cause in a way. I'm not going to tell anybody what they have to do as far as like staying and fighting or leaving. But yeah, it's just that is a personal choice, and I think that you are justified in doing either one. Let's see here. Max Gibbs says, Bernstein, you're not American. Well, you're not anti-Semitic. Also, I was born here, and so was my mom. So, let's see here. Mary John 3601 says, God, without him, you are zero. Yeah, maybe. N5RTN says, how about imperialism? I don't love it. All right, let's see here. The administration picks and chooses who to battle and who to bully. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Rick Brunetti says, wow, what a horrible remark. What are you referring to there? All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Period says, current view on the administration, it's a fucking nightmare of corruption and barbaric monstrosities. Suleiman, is that my friend Suleiman from New York? Do you like that one Kanye song? I don't like any Kanye songs anymore. Wait, are you anti-Semitic baiting me, my guy? Kate, so you're probably not the guy that I know in New York. K2 says most of Europe can afford their robo social safety nets because the U.S. pays for it indirectly. I don't find that to be a convincing argument, K2. I find that to be more right-wing talking points. Thomas McNamara says, do you think a man can become a woman? Sure, why not? N5RTN says, how are you today, though, Jared? What did you eat today, brother? So far, I always start my day out with some chocolate and banana oatmeal. And then I'm going to lunch with a buddy of mine. We're probably going to get tacos. Thomas Kilpatrick says, what up with Trump stealing the gold medal from FIFA? I don't know. He's a weird guy. He potentially was just like rage baiting to try to get people to not talk about the Epstein shit anymore. User 81 Nashville says, why do people vote against their best interests? Propaganda and misinformation. If you read the book Dark Money by Jane Mayer, it outlines exactly how much and how long this has been going on for, that the billionaire class has been flooding all of our information networks with propaganda to convince people to either vote for Republicans or to not vote at all. It is sinister. It is endemic. It is, I can't think of enough bad words for it. Tyga says, do you think the Epstein list exists? I don't know, but the Trump administration is acting real fucking sus around it. Let's see here. Dan Blackbird says, this friend silly man of yours in the chat, is he helping you become your best self? I don't think so. Sorry for Tomorrow says, I'm deporting hardworking good people. Let's see here. Mass amnesty should be instated. It would literally create more money into the economy and save on deporting hardworking good people. Yeah, I'm not really sure what people mean when they talk about mass amnesty. It almost feels like another one of those terms that the left and the right disagree on what it actually means. So I'm not throwing any shade for you using it. I'm just saying I'm not going to bat for it just yet until I fully understand what that policy means and what everybody agrees it means. Then I'm not going to bat for it. Andrew J. Rivers, my good buddy, says, is Trump on the Berenstein list? He is on the Berenstein shit list. Jersey Rican says, do you think he will eventually do martial law? I don't know if he'll be able to get away with it, but I do know that he's constantly looking for excuses. He's constantly trying to increase chaos and desperation in order to justify declaring martial law. He would love to, and he can't wait to. He's just waiting for the justification, and he's trying to create the justification. Jackie says, is Trump on the list? I mean, he probably is. He spent a lot of time with Epstein. They were like best friends for a while. There is a ton of evidence linking the two of them together. And the fact that Trump has said like some really gross things about his own daughter when she was young, about how attracted he was to her, like it all kind of makes sense, like the fucking shoe fits, you know what I mean? Susie says, do you think the MAGA cult will ever go away? It will if we do the work of making it go away, Susie. And I'm not talking about violence. I'm talking about convincing. I'm talking about bringing people out from the darkness. Daniel Bernhardt says, how did Epstein make his money? I believe he worked in finance. Jersey Rican says, do you think we will have militarized communities nationwide with the ICE budget? I'm extremely worried about how ICE has currently had their budget increased 360%. They are now the most well-funded law enforcement agency in America. They have a larger budget than the militaries of like France and Italy and shit like that. And they're hiring. They're hiring like double what their previous, what their previous shit was. It's fucking terrifying. It is really terrifying, and I just hope to God that people do the work so that we can nullify whatever increased power and influence that they have going forward. But yeah, it's scary. I can't tell you if it's going to be tomorrow or a month from now or a year from now or ever that they're going to be fucking in every city checking our papers as we walk down the street like the fucking Stasi. Stasi? That's what I'm thinking about, right? East Germany, they were called the Stasi. It sounds a lot like Nazi, which makes me feel like I'm misremembering that. Firewall Production says, good news is that ICE is also comically inept. It's good and bad news. XC Money says, do you think the U.S. Constitution needs to be changed? Yeah, and I mean, we have the mechanism already. Like, amendments are there because the founders anticipated needing to change the Constitution. So they were like, and you can add amendments if you need to, mix things up a little bit. But yeah, we need to have an amendment undoing Citizens United, just for starts, let's see here. K2 says, American taxpayers are paying for other countries' infrastructure because our economy is huge. No? I don't know how accurate that is, K2. I know that there are ways in which we offer various kinds of assistance to other countries. I would be shocked to find out that the reason why Denmark and Canada and England and France and Italy and Germany, the reason why they can afford universal health care is because we're paying for it. I think that's kind of bullshit. It's not like they are all living, they're not all vassal states to America. Like, we potentially have certain trade deals that include us funding certain things for them. But yeah, it is not as cut and dry as we can't have universal health care because we're paying for their universal health care kind of a thing. Heath Miller says, will Canada ever be the 51st state because the Golden Boy thinks it will be? It will never be the 51st state. Scott Clower says, Epstein was a math teacher, obviously got help. Was he a math teacher? I'm pretty sure he worked in finance. K2 says, all those countries you listed have big oil companies that bolster their economy. I'm not really sure the point you're trying to make there, K2. Ezra Arze says, have you broken ties with any conservative MAGA relatives? Yeah, that's my bad. I probably shouldn't have done that. But yeah, I was fucking pissed. During the first Trump administration, I had a different attitude towards outreach with people in the conservative movement, whether they were good-natured, good faith actors who just lived in information bubbles. I was like, fuck them all. And I made tons of videos making fun of them. And I was rewarded for making those videos with hundreds of thousands of, over 100,000 followers and millions of views. All right, Dislocated says, my daughter is a type 1 diabetic on Medicaid. I am terrified of what's going to happen. I'm terrified for your daughter as well. Mr. Fortune says, has anyone mentioned the Berenstein Bears to you recently? I would say at least once a week. CS1 says, how do we stop gerrymandering? You have to vote for politicians that are going to not do gerrymandering. And here's the thing. The Democratic Party does do gerrymandering, but only to stay competitive. They, during the Biden administration, tried to pass a bill to make gerrymandering illegal and to make it so that all 50 states had to use independent districting commissions when the census took place. And Republicans blocked it. Republicans blocked the bill trying to make gerrymandering not a thing anymore. So how do we get rid of gerrymandering? You have to unelect every single fucking Republican. And you have to replace them with the kinds of Democrats who are on board with the structural change that we need so that our politics cannot be gamified and hijacked by the billionaire class in the Republican Party any longer. That's the long and short of it, you know? And as much as people love fucking throwing shade at the Democratic Party, it's so fucking lame and cringe to advocate for them because insert reason here. But the fact of the matter is, like, they're better than the Republican Party by a lot. And better is better and worse is worse. And you get to good by voting for better and excising worse. And that's what we should do, you know? Let's see here. Thomas Kilpatrick says, problem is they just as bots. That is inaccurate, Thomas Kilpatrick. They are not nearly, you know, I'm not going to go out here and say that the Democratic Party doesn't have issues with, you know, being influenced by money in politics, or even that there aren't Democrats in elected Democrats in the party that are corrupt or guilty of corruption. You know, Senator Mendoza, for example, he's on his way to jail, fucking, and you know, good. Don't let the door hit you on the ass house, buddy. But the fact of the matter is, way more Republicans are corrupt than Democrats. The platform of the Republican Party is pro-corruption. They're letting Trump have a fucking cryptocurrency, which is the most wildly corrupt thing I've ever fucking seen in my entire life. So it's not both sides on this issue, my guy. It is one party is way fucking worse than the other. Alrighty, let's see here. I'm crazy. Your point says Democrats are influenced by emotion. No, I'd say Democrats are influenced by facts. Let's see here. Jersey Rican says, what do we do about the Supreme Court? We got to elect Democrats. That is the only way that we fix the Supreme Court, because we need to elect enough Democrats to either impeach sitting Supreme Court justices or add seats to the Supreme Court to nullify their votes. That's the only way that we solve the Supreme Court. Let's see here. Nuke says, does the name Soros ring a bell? Yeah, the reason why it does is because the right-wing people won't shut the fuck up about him, because he's literally like the only billionaire that goes to bat for the Democratic Party, unlike 75% of every other billionaire that exists, including billionaires from adversarial nations like Vladimir Putin. Alrighty, Ezra Arze says, is Bernie a Democrat or an independent? I mean, he caucuses with a Democrat. He is, for all intents and purposes, a Democrat. Alrighty, K2 says, how will UBI work if the economy is ultimately run autonomously by AI and oligarchical companies? That's a really good question, K2. And I think that your framing of it is interesting, because to me, if the world and the economy is run autonomously by AI and oligarchical companies, then we would need, you know, UBI, because otherwise there are going to be so many fewer jobs out there. It's going to be, you know, fucking Thunderdome out there. Everybody just fucking struggling to survive and becoming cannibals and shit like that. So, you know, the system that we exist in right now, our financial model, the value of currency versus labor versus goods and services, It's all, it's made up. Like we created these systems, we created the rules to this game, and it needs to be adjusted. K2, do you ever play any like online games like League of Legends or Heroes of the Storm or Marvel, Heroes? I forget what it's called. The new Marvel 5-on-5 game, Overwatch, anything like that. K2. Somebody says, "Do you like Trump?" No, I do not. Fog War Productions says, "I accidentally traced the amendment." Hey, I'm a cowboy. I accidentally traced the American political divide back to the May flag this morning. That's pretty funny. Mr. Fortune says, "Well, no, Bernie works with Democrats, but he's not a Democrat in his behavior and rhetoric." That's inaccurate, Mr. Fortune. So there are a lot of people in the Democratic Party, elected Democrats, who are in the same platform category as Bernie Sanders, like AOC and Maxwell Frost and Jasmine Crockett and Katie Porter, Brian Schatz and Chris Murphy, etc. So he's not separate from the Democratic Party. He might not call himself a Democrat, but he caucuses with them and he influences their platform. And a growing majority of the party, I don't know if it's a majority, but a growing percentage of the party is Democrats the way that Bernie Sanders is a Democrat. All right, K2, I'm still waiting for your response on if you ever play any online games like I was talking about. CS17 says, "Who runs funnier, J.D. Vance or Donald Trump?" I don't think I've ever seen Donald Trump run in his life. Sorry for Tomorrow says, "Republican can't comprehend that Democrats are willing to call out their own when they're wrong." Yeah, but that's only because they've been told that that's not the case, And remember, we practice radical empathy on this channel, where we understand that people are a victim of their information bubbles and their communities. Let's see here. Cajun Queen says they are all socialists. No, they're not. They're democratic socialists. That's what they call themselves, at least. Mac Daddy Shrimp says, "Wanting to be left but can't find a leftist creator to criticize the left. Red flag. Criticize the left." I mean, you can criticize the left, but criticizing the left, to me, Colson says, "Bro, ignoring my comment because he's brainwashed." I didn't see your comment. Anyways, so Mac Daddy Shrimp. Criticizing the left always feels to me like you run a convenience store and you've got kids reading magazines in the corner and you want them to not read the magazines, you want them to pay for them instead. But at the same time, somebody's stabbing you in the throat. And so criticizing the left always feels to me like you're yelling at those kids reading the magazines as opposed to stopping that dude from cutting your throat. The Republican Party is doing so many things that are wildly corrupt, unethical, illegal, unconstitutional, barbaric, unconscionable. Like, why? What have the Democrats done that is even fucking close to what the Republican Party is currently doing? To Trump having a fucking crypto coin, to building concentration camps, to sending people who have done zero crimes to torture prisons in El Salvador and Libya and South Sudan. Like, tell me. Like, I'm desperate to know. Colson says, "You talk about corruption, but over 60 elected Democrats are funded by AIPAC." You make it sound like, first of all, I don't know if that's accurate, but also you make it sound like the Republican Party isn't funded by AIPAC, Colson. So yeah, miss me with that shit. Drizzy Rican says, "Did rural America read Project 2025? I would say most people did not read Project 2025. All right. Dick Tyna says, "They stole tons of funding for houselessness and other issues that only got worse." The Democrats did? They know that 100% they did not. Elevate NYC says, "What happened in Syria?" I am not up on the latest in Syria, but I also saw that video of that government building getting bombed. Mac Daddy Shrimp says, "Fast and Furious scandal with Obama." So Mac Daddy Shrimp, what you're doing is you are picking mistakes that the Democrats have made and saying that they are equal to what the Republican Party is doing, because that is wildly inaccurate. That is bananas. You are literally saying that the kids reading magazines are as bad as the dude stabbing somebody in the throat. Anything that you think of, I can give you an example of Republican administration doing something that is 10 times worse. Jose Araujo says, "Israel. Republicans are doing the same thing, only worse." K2 says, "Dems seem to vilify Republican voters without understanding their POV, pushing them further right." So number one, I don't agree with that framing at all, K2. Like, why cannot we criticize somebody for something wrong that they do without pushing them to the right? Also, if that is the mechanism, then what is stopping a billionaire from funding a bunch of people pretending to be liberals and doing all that shit, like criticizing Republicans without understanding their POV in order to push them to the right? It just seems very inorganic. It seems very heads I win, tails you lose. Like, I don't judge Republican voters based on the right-wing trolls that attack me on the internet, and so I don't think that right-wing voters should judge Democrats by the left-wing trolls that attack them on the internet. And K2, you didn't answer my question. K2 says Republicans push Democrats further to the left. Well, I've never heard that argument, ever. I've only ever heard the opposite. Colson says, how do you feel about the Epstein files? I personally feel that both sides are on it, so it won't be out. I mean, the Democrats are the ones that are trying to get it out right now. So, I'm sure that there are powerful people from both sides of the aisle on there, but none of them are president right now. The only one is Donald Trump. K2 says, yes, I played online games before. Okay, so you're aware that, like a character that is winning too much will get nerfed, or a character that is losing too much will get buffed. Like, you're familiar with that mechanism, K2? Kit Ulfer says, how do you feel that Biden didn't release the Epstein files? So it wasn't Biden's job to release the Epstein files. It was the job of Christopher Wray, who was the head of the FBI at the time, who was appointed by Donald Trump. So if you want to know why Christopher Wray, the Republican head of the FBI, who was appointed by the Republican Donald Trump, who is currently hiding the Epstein data from us, why Christopher Wray, the Republican, did not release the Epstein files during the Biden administration, you will have to ask Christopher Wray, the Republican that was appointed by Donald Trump to be head of the FBI. K2 says, so you're advocating for monthly balance changes to the economy. That is an extremely simplified version of what I'm saying, K2, but I am saying that right now the billionaire class are the ones that need to be nerfed, because the systems have been gamified by them in a way where they always win. And not only that, but then they use their money to change the rules even more to make it easier for them to win and harder for us to win. And so, yeah, why can't we just, tweak the model a little bit to make things more fair and equitable? Why can't we make it so that nobody has more than $900 million? Like, what would happen if we took all that money that billionaires are fucking stashing in the Cayman Islands and fucking Swiss bank accounts and shit, not paying taxes on it? What happened if we gave that money to people that desperately need money for rent and food and medicine? I believe, and it's the Keynesian model, it's Bidenomics, that when you give poor people money, they spend it instead of hoarding it and putting it in fucking, foreign bank accounts. They spend it, which, builds the economy and, strengthens businesses and makes it so that businesses need to hire more people, Triska says the Republican base has been pushing since the beginning to get the Epstein files and love a conspiracy. That is accurate. Colson says, do you know that Biden Democrats could have demanded the release of them? I don't know that, Colson. Sphinx Egyptian says, Trump just admitted on live TV he wants to gerrymander 5 districts to get the seats. What do? The same thing we do every day. We do the work, Sphinx Egyptian. Check out my Discord if you want to know what the work is and what we can do to stop Donald Trump, the Republican Party, and all this fucking bullshit. The Noodle of Max says, what's your opinion on the War of 1812? I don't really have an opinion about it. Ezra Arze says, what will reveal sooner, JFK unaliving or Epstein files? Probably JFK. Colson says, you wouldn't know because you choose to ignore it. All the elites are involved. No, I'm not, Colson. I'm for releasing all that information. I don't really give a shit who gets named in it. Let's see here. Orly says, I think all of MAGAs and his Trumpers need to stop watching Fox News. I think everybody should stop watching Fox News regardless. K2 says, elite control both parties, big tech on left, big oil on right. Seems like you're fighting the wrong fight. That is inaccurate. Big tech is not protecting the left. Big tech is mostly libertarian. What big tech wants is to protect their own tech dollars. And that is why almost all of them were at the inauguration and gave Trump money for his inauguration. It is right-wing inaccurate propaganda to suggest that big tech is aligned with the left and not aligned with their own pocketbook. K2, what do you think about that? Fog War Production says we could solve gerrymandering by making boundaries both reflective and permanent. I don't know about permanent because population sizes change, people move around and stuff like that. Let's see here. Jersey Rican says, do you want the Epstein files released? I don't know what's in the Epstein files. I can only say that I don't give a shit who goes down if they were proven during the Epstein and Maxwell cases to have engaged in PDF file activity and statutory grapings and stuff like that. Loopy Lou says, call your senators and tell them to vote no on the rescission bill the GOP is trying to steal from us. Completely agree with that, Loopy Lou. Please do the work, everybody. N5RTN says, if the country doesn't want immigrants, why is the evil director one? The evil director. Who are you referring to? Oh, you talking about Elon Musk? I mean, they just don't want brown immigrants, you know. Casey Crypto says, when will the House vote on the Genius Act? That I'm not 100% sure on. Sphinx Egyptian says, okay, will do, but there needs to be independent commissions and people need to fight the redrawn map. Completely agree with that. But, you know, the FBI director. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I don't know if Kash Patel is an immigrant or if he was born in this country or not. Let's see here. There needs to be independent commissions and people need to fight the redrawn maps. I completely agree with you on that, Sphinx Egyptian, but look at who is fighting to keep gerrymandering the way it is. It's the Republican Party every fucking minute of every fucking day. And it is only the Democratic Party that is trying to make it so that this isn't a thing. Alrighty. Let's see here. XC Money says, do you think they add more congressional seats there will be Democrats choose? I don't know. First, I'm not 100% sure what you're asking there, XC Buddy, but I'm also not sure. If the question you're asking is what I think you're asking, then I'm not sure. Danielle says, who do you think will be the next Democratic candidate for president? I always punt on this question, Danielle, because I'm not trying to get people focused on the presidential election. I'm trying to get them focused on the midterm election in 2026. We need to fucking run the table. We need to unelect every Republican who is letting this fucking shit show happen right now. They need to suffer electoral consequences for this shit, or they are just going to keep on doing it over and over and over again. They're going to keep fucking us all over so that the billionaire class can have more caviar and more mansions and more private yachts and more private jets. And so we need to teach them that lesson by unelecting every single fucking one of them. All right, scrolling down the bottom, K2 says, tech push to the right is recent, small portion of the companies, but majority of the personalities. I don't agree with that, K2. Have you read Careless People? Have you read Dark Money? Like, all of this is, this has been going on for a long time. The culture of Silicon Valley has been socially liberal, but fiscally and governmentally libertarian. Like, they believe in being tech oligarchs and the new authoritarians, Let's see here. Mason S says, why didn't Biden release the Epstein files? Because Biden was not in charge of the FBI. Christopher Wray was in charge of the FBI, and he was appointed by Donald Trump. He was a Republican. So if you want to know why Donald Trump appointed Republican Christopher Wray didn't release the Epstein files that Donald Trump is currently trying to hide, then you'll have to ask Christopher Wray. Fernand Jor says, do you think Elon Musk will get seats in Congress? I don't doubt the idea that his money could potentially upend some vulnerable Republicans, but I don't think it's going to be substantive. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to a majority. All right. K2 says, is flip-flopping parties not indicative of my point that money controls both parties? So I object to the way that you're framing this, K2, because it is true that money influences politics, but there's a difference between a Democratic politician who has a Democratic platform being moved to water down their Democratic policies because they're worried about losing the billionaire funding that they need to compete against Republicans who have access to 75% of all billionaire political donations. There's a difference between that and the Republican Party doing what the Republican Party said they were going to do, which is cutting regulations for all these tech businesses, cutting regulations for all these fossil fuel industries, cutting taxes for all these billionaires and their corporations, and fucking over the working class, putting people in charge of the NLRB who are like, fuck unions, fuck the workers. It is a difference of scale. It is the difference between the size of the sun and the size of an ant. Is this a problem on the Democratic side? Absolutely. But who is trying to solve that problem? The Democratic Party is. Who has the politicians who aren't influenced by billionaire cash, who aren't taking billionaire money? The Democratic Party does. The Republican Party does not. Alrighty. JK2 says, just want to be on the winning side. Musk and Zuck were both liberal crusaders in 2016. They said they were, but they weren't, actually. They always only had their self-interest in mind. Read Careless People, K2. You will see that Zuckerberg was never a Democrat. He never gave a shit. He never gave a shit about the way that his platforms were hurting people. He only cared about growth and money. He was willing to throw all of us under the bus so that he'd get more fucking users in China and Brazil and fucking Myanmar. You know, he sent a fucking pregnant woman to Myanmar when they were in the middle of a fucking coup, a military coup. Like, that is not some shit that a Democrat does. Alrighty, everybody. I gotta dip out of here because I got lunch dates with an old high school buddy of mine. But thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for all the questions. K2, I really appreciate you being here, man, and arguing with me in good faith. I really hope to, to maybe push the needle a little bit on some of your beliefs, and I hope that you are open to hearing all this stuff. My normal streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can find my schedule for both live streaming and stand-up on my website, jarrettberenstein.com. If there were any questions that I was not able to get to today, my DMs are open. I sincerely hope that you guys will not be shy about engaging with me. I am trying to convince people to be part of the movement. I am trying to get people to do the work. And so if you are on the fence about this stuff, if you know people who are on the fence about this stuff, if you want to do the work and you want to help, like, let's be a part of the community together. Go to my Discord. I got great resources there. But DMs are open. You can email me through my website. And I appreciate all the support you guys give me, whether it is the free kind or the paid kind. So like and share and tell your friends how great my live stream is and tell everybody how great it is. Then they got to check it out. And if you want to support financially, you can, but you don't have to. I have a Patreon that you can find on my website, jarrettberenstein.com. I have a store that you can buy things from on my website, jarrettberenstein.com. And you can also send gifts and subscribe on TikTok and Twitch and YouTube and all the various places that you can follow me and, give me your support and everything like that. So yeah, please check out the Discord. Please do the work. Recruit other people to do the work. The more people that do this work, the less work that we all have to do. So I'm out of here, everybody. Be good to each other. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work, and I will see you here tomorrow. Same bad time, same bad channel. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, 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 bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.